To be a 25, 26, 27-year-old minor leaguer, which is a lot of guys, to be one of those guys and to know that you still have to make it to another level, you still have to continue to compete, it's a lot. It's an emotional weight, it's a physical weight, and it's something that should be shared between teams. It shouldn't have to rest on Sean and his teammates. It shouldn't have to rest on David Price to take care of these guys. It should be on their employers.
This is a roundtable series brought to you by Advocates for Minor Leaguers, a nonprofit formed by minor and major league players to better the working conditions of minor leaguers. I'm Xavier Scruggs, former major leaguer and minor leaguer, current ESPN analyst, and I'll be moderating this panel, which includes some of the most respected thought leaders. And I'm so excited because we have the opportunity to explore the various issues surrounding minor league ball players. I want to introduce everyone that we have on this first roundtable. First, we have Sean Doolittle, 2020 Roberto Clemente Award nominee, World Series champ, and MLBPA union rep. He's also an outspoken advocate for minor league rights. Secondly, we have Emily Waldon, national prospect writer for The Athletic. Her 2019 article, I Can't Afford to Play This Game, won Sabre Baseball Awards for Best Contemporary Baseball Commentary. And she also helped start a job matching platform for players looking for part-time work. Lastly, Collin McHugh, another World Series champ, 9-year major leaguer, and he's also a union rep for the MLBPA. Thank you all so much for joining me today on this roundtable. Let's just get into it. Let's dive into it. Emily, I want to start with you. First, specifically about COVID-19 and the impact it's had on minor leaguers. What are your thoughts on this and what the athletes have really had to go through?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that this has just been an absolute nightmare for player development. From that perspective, it's just made it so challenging for the players to focus on moving forward in their respective careers. But also personally, you've got guys who have families back home, their spouses, there's children. There's all sorts of bills that don't go away because of a pandemic. And when they found out about the changes with spring training, that left a lot of these guys scrambling to find backup employment, not knowing if they were going to get a call to have to show up to the affiliates, and nobody had any idea what the year was going to look like. So for them, I think it really hit home personally, as well as from a player development perspective.
Yeah, and let's also, can you touch a little bit on MLB's plans prior to COVID-19 and what really happened throughout the season as we take a look back?
Yeah, I think from a team perspective, it really did vary organization by organization. I was in contact with quite a few of the minor leaguers, and it was sort of a mixed bag of opinions when it came to how certain teams handled protocols, how they handled safety measures. So it really wasn't exactly one blanket way of handling how everything took place. But I know all the teams did try to keep the safety of the players at the forefront. And I think they really just didn't fully understand how complex it was going to be between the protocols at the facilities and then trying to figure out what was going to happen in the minor league season.
Yeah. Sean, do you think there's anything that could have been done, I guess, prior to or in advance for what we went through this season, some of the things that maybe should have been changed, or, any way we could have went about it a little bit differently for these minor leaguers?
Paying them a little bit more money. I say that jokingly, but I think that's something that really could have made things a lot easier for these minor leaguers as they wrestle with the uncertainty of the 2020 situation with their season getting canceled, as they continue to try to move towards their ultimate goal of one day playing in the major leagues. Because like Emily said, these players had their season canceled, but a lot of them were told to stay ready, in case they got an invite to the alternate training site. And, they really didn't get a timeline of when to report or be ready. So it was they had to find a way to stay ready. And depending on what part of the country these guys might have been in, stuff might have been closed. There might not have been a facility where they could go work out. And so now, do you move to a place where the pandemic hasn't really hit? Can you afford to go into a baseball training facility? Can you afford to continue to buy the kinds of maybe supplements and training equipment and food that you need to perform at a high level, to be a major league prospect and continue being a professional athlete, all while juggling real world stuff. The pandemic, you got bills to pay at home. A lot of these guys have families that they have to provide for. So I think that's just one of the many reasons why, the case should be made for increasing the pay of minor league baseball players.
Right. And I think you touched on something very important, and is staying ready as a minor league ball player. You don't know what the situation is going to be. I'm a baseball player, but I'm a hitter, and you guys are pitchers. So I know it's got to be tough to get it started, get it going. You don't know how many innings, and then some of these guys jump right into starting roles. Collin, talk to me a little bit about maybe the mental aspect that goes into, having to stay ready, because, physically we ask for a lot of things for our bodies, but mentally I feel like it's maybe a little bit tougher.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit on it. The idea of knowing exactly what's expected of you in any given offseason as a minor leaguer is non-existent. You go into it only hoping to make it to the next level. You're only hoping that next rung will be achievable, because you don't really know as a minor leaguer. I was in the minor leagues for parts of 7 years, and every year you're fighting for your life, and not just against the guys that are on your team or the guys ahead of you, but a whole new crop of draft guys that are coming in every year. And so every offseason, you're trying to tweak it, you're trying to get a little bit better, but at the same time, you're trying to understand what it takes to perform at that next level. And most of the time, I mean, I know from at least my experience in the minor leagues and then with minor league guys, these guys work their tails off every day, and they go above and beyond, usually with 2 or 3 jobs to go along with the training that they're doing every day. And it's unsustainable is what it comes down to. It's an unsustainable life in the best of times. And we've seen this year, which is obviously an awful situation in this country and around the world, which we forget about. There's at least a third of minor league baseball players are Latin American guys. And these guys, not only are they stuck in between here and back home where they're from, but they're also stuck in between on, like Sean's saying, on preparation, on trying to take care of themselves and also trying to prepare on the field. So, these guys already start from, they start from a couple yards back from where everybody else thinks that they start. I think the average fan thinks that everybody's just trying to make it, and they're trying to make it along. But you're trying to make it in spite of everything. The odds are stacked against you. And I think our goal, and I think the goal of a lot of major league players moving forward, is to even the odds, to try and at least make the starting point the same for everybody and give everybody an equal shot. And that includes increasing their rights, their collectively bargained, hopefully, rights, and their pay, which is part of it.
Yeah, you touched on some of those tough issues that all ball players are having to go through, but specifically the minor leaguers having their teams being reduced, and in turn the jobs are being reduced. Emily, can you touch on some of the things that you've heard from some players, or what their thoughts are as far as these jobs being taken away from them? Obviously a lot of players were released this past season, so how do they navigate that?
Yeah, and I really like how Collin touched on the fact that the competition is so fierce, and so many of these guys are showing up at the field way earlier than they're supposed to, and then they're being told, are you actually working? Is this really qualify as work? And then they're also told they have to come out in the very front of their class. And my question has always been, how are you supposed to develop if your own team is telling you, do you really need to be there? Do you really need to work this hard? And all these guys are going, look, my chance is as good as the next guy, depending on how much work I put in, how much effort I put in. And so the fact that they almost feel like they're not being rewarded for showing up at the times that they do, trying to find the facilities that they do, they want to be the best. These are competitors. These are guys who are saying, I'm chasing this dream for a reason. I've been chasing this dream for so many years. I've been able to look past the fact that I've been paid in peanuts and had to scramble and have those 2 or 3 extra jobs. And for these guys, I think it's just more of kind of a frustration, just saying, look, I've signed on to this organization. I would like to know that my team cares enough about me to make sure my needs are met, whether that be insurance, whether that be housing, if you're in the Latin American community, a lot of these guys ended up getting turned around while they were in a plane headed back home when the borders started to close in their home countries. You think about the mental adjustment these guys have to make going, can't go home. You can't see your family that you expected to see. And now they're supposed to come back and still perform at the top of their game. So a lot of mental frustrations there, a lot of mental drain on these guys. Hasn't been simple whatsoever.
Yeah, and not only is it mentally draining, but we're also draining some of these communities that's, these teams are being taken away from too. Sean, I want to hear maybe your thoughts on, obviously you came up, played in the minor leagues, like some of these teams, some of these communities will no longer have teams. How does that affect those communities? How does that affect, the people that rallied with those teams at the minor league level and also the big league level?
Yeah, I think, this affects baseball as a whole, as a sport. Obviously, you talk about scaling back the minor leagues, and the first thing that comes to mind are the players who are going to lose out on opportunities to, one day reach the big leagues. I think if you've been watching the playoffs on TV, all the way through the World Series, how many times does Joe Buck talk about a story of a guy in a really endearing way that he was like this really late round draft pick who grinded it out in the minor leagues for 5, 6, 7 years and slept in his car and was driving all around, and now he's in the World Series. And I think it's a reminder that there's more than one way to get to the big leagues, and a lot of these guys are late bloomers, and it takes them a couple, maybe 3, 4, 5 years of grinding it out in the minor leagues and putting in those off-season workouts, that development that can one day, get you to be a part of a World Series in the major leagues. But, when you're talking about minor league baseball is so important for the growth of our sport. You're talking about communities in maybe more remote parts of the country where the only live professional baseball that might be within driving distance is a minor league affiliate of one of the 30 clubs. And the communities, the way that they rally in support of the teams, a lot of families in these towns will become host families to host players, which, that's a complicated issue in itself because the players can't afford their own housing. But it shows the level of commitment that comes from the community, right? They welcome these players and in some cases coaches into their homes. It provides jobs for people in the community. And I think it's so important just for growing our game. That might be, a trip to a minor league baseball game might be the thing that happens to a fan and they fall in love with the game for life. I grew up when I was really little. We used to go to Modesto A's games. Modesto was an Oakland A's affiliate, and they were the Modesto A's. We grew up going to A's games. I was the kid chasing the mascot on the bases. Like when we moved to New Jersey, we went to Lakewood Blue Claws games. When we would visit my grandparents in Maryland, we would go to Bowie Bay Sox games. It was more affordable. You could get better access to players, and then you would follow those players as they continued their climb and hopefully one day got to the big leagues. And you remember the time when you stuck a baseball over the fence and you got that guy's autograph. The connection that happens at a minor league baseball game is so vital for the continuation and the promotion of our sport, and we absolutely cannot lose that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. Collin, I saw you shaking your head a little bit. Do you have some thoughts to add there as well?
Yeah, Sean's right on that. To a lot of people across the country, this is their big leagues. These minor league games are their big leagues. These players in Rome, Georgia, I went to college in Rome, Georgia, where the Rome Braves, the single A affiliate of the Braves were. I suppose they still are, I'm not sure. But these games to the people who lived in Rome were the closest they were ever going to get to see, in most cases, to see the Braves. And they called them the Baby Braves, and they would follow them throughout their whole career. And Sean's right, this is how you build fans from a grassroots perspective. Baseball is the American pastime. And we like to say that, and we like to say it colloquially, and we like to say it with ease and with an air of almost arrogance to it as baseball players. But the truth is, it's that because of the minor leagues. It's that because we have teams in remote areas of the country where that is the only sport. And from that perspective, when you take away, a third of the teams at this point, you're not just losing players, you're not just losing franchises, organizations, you're losing fans and you're losing people, and people who have enjoyed these not just for a couple years. Like Sean was saying, he was little. I'm not gonna give away how old you are, Sean, but like these leagues have been around way before him. The Eastern League I played in, the Appalachian League that I played in, these leagues have been around since the 20s and 30s. So these are historic organizations, historic cities that, and a lot of them in economically depressed towns where entertainment value, especially a value that can be seen for cheap, is a big deal. It's a big deal to a lot of people. It's a big deal to a lot of people in the organization. And, it hurts a little bit to know that, like, the people in Binghamton, when I played there, they're in it. They're in it every day, all summer. And to know that, like, baseball is not going to be available, it doesn't seem right to me.
I see exactly where you're coming from as somebody that came up in the minor league system for 7 years before getting a big league shot. I'm very familiar with playing in multiple different cities, and the opportunity to play in front of some of these fans that, like you said, this is like the big leagues for them. This is all they'll get to see. So I understand the importance on that side of it. Lastly, talking about this year, Emily, I want to touch on the stipends that some of these players received. Obviously, not every organization was the same with their stipends, but I guess, was it enough? Was it the right way to go about it? Every organization was different. Obviously, should there have been one blanket for everybody? How did you see that kind of being handled by the major league teams?
Yeah, if we're going blunt here, I think it was handled very poorly. I don't think it should have been that much of a debate as to whether do we take care of our guys, do we not take care of our guys. And I think what a lot of fans aren't necessarily aware of is these guys don't get paid until their season starts. The minor league players, they don't get their first paycheck until they're with their assigned affiliate, and they're getting the per diem during spring training for food. But this is literally their livelihood. And for the teams to kind of sit there, for Major League Baseball to sit there and say, should we not? The fact that was debatable was upsetting to me, because at the end of the day, these guys need food to take care of themselves, take care of their families, and I really wasn't a fan of how it was handled.
Yeah. Sean, any thoughts on that?
I just think that it put the minor league players in such a tough spot, because it made it really difficult for them to continue staying prepared. Obviously, from a financial standpoint, like, it costs money to stay prepared, and it's not like there's another, but they're still under contract. So it's not like there's another maybe league, or they can't go to a different country because of the travel restrictions around the pandemic. So they're kind of trapped, and they have to find a way to stay ready. My heart went out to those guys. My teammates and I got together. I got to be the one to announce it, but my teammates and I got together, and we worked with actually more than baseball to try to put together some money for our minor league guys who were really caught in that limbo. Just because the attitude amongst big leaguers is changing. I think the minor leagues used to be seen as kind of this rite of passage, right? Like, we all went through it. It was a grind, we all remember those long bus rides and cramming 6 guys into like a 2-bedroom apartment. How much fun was that? Well, we look at that a different way because we made it to the big leagues. But a lot more guys don't make it, and it's really, really hard on them and their families. And our guys recognized it and came together, and we wanted to support the guys that are in our organization. After we had won a World Series, we felt it was really important to give back and support the guys in our organization.
Yeah, I think it was really cool how guys like you, David Price, were able to kind of pledge a donation toward the minor leaguers. And that just shows the support coming from the major leaguers and understanding how difficult it is and how tough it is to deal with some of these issues firsthand. I want to move on here and talk and started off with Collin and specifically about off-season payment for minor leaguers. As we enter the off-season, we have to recognize that these players are not getting paid while still being expected to meet certain requirements laid out by their organizations. We talk about weight training, agility training, just baseball training in general, eating healthy, sleeping, etc. I guess my question to you, Collin, would be, how did you navigate these things personally? And then how do you see, or how do you advise some of these young kids to navigate this, or how should it be done for these guys?
It's hard. I mean, I appreciate the question, X. It's one of those things where, as a minor leaguer, and you know this as well as anybody, that every day in the off season you have an idea of what you need to do, but the opportunity to do it might not be available that day for a million different reasons. As a minor leaguer, off the top, it's money. Do we have enough money to put food on the table and to have the gym membership? Or are you going to do like me a couple of years where you're just running sprints at 9:00 at night in the parking lot because that's the best you got that day? And as far as like supplements and all that stuff go, we as big leaguers have been able to collectively bargain rights for off-season stuff that is going to benefit teams, because we're going to be better. We're going to be better off if we're in better shape. We're going to be better off if we're healthier and we're not getting hurt during the season. And I think it goes back to this old school mentality that minor league players are just commodities. They're just pieces, and you can mix and match, and whichever ones rise to the top, we'll take those and we'll put them in where we need to. But we have to remember that these are people. These are human beings that are out there grinding every day, trying their best to do something that most of these guys have been doing literally their entire lives. I've been playing baseball since I was 4 years old, and I'm not the exception. I think most guys have been playing this game as long as they can remember. And to be a 25, 26, 27-year-old minor leaguer, which is a lot of guys, to be one of those guys and to know that you still have to make it to another level, you still have to continue to compete, it's a lot. It's an emotional weight, it's a physical weight, and it's something that should be shared between teams. It shouldn't have to rest on Sean and his teammates. It shouldn't have to rest on David Price to take care of these guys. It should be on their employers. It should be on their employers to take care of them. It's hard for me to believe that we have to say this over and over again, but it is the way that the game is working right now. And I think that we've got a long way to go, but at this point, the support from both the major league and the minor league players is there. And I think change is both necessary and on the horizon.
Can I add something to what Collin just said? Because I agree with him 1,000%. And if you look at it from the club's perspective, wouldn't you want your minor leaguers to be able to use the offseason to solely focus on improving their game, getting stronger, getting faster, being able to spend hours in the cage, or going to a facility where they can work on pitch design and maybe get on a machine that can track data to give them feedback, so that when they show up for spring training next year, they're in a better spot. They can continue to help the organization. If we're in this, if you think about each organization and the minor leaguers who are kind of filling those rungs of the ladder, wouldn't you want them to continue their development, to push upward, put pressure on everybody at the top to continue to get better, so that the team can win more games and ultimately get to a World Series? But the reality is, like Collin was talking about, a lot of players, most players probably, unless they were bonus babies, don't have the resources in the offseason to solely focus on baseball. A lot of guys are getting, part-time jobs, multiple part-time jobs to kind of make ends meet during the offseason. Some guys are going, to winter ball. And that's a whole other conversation, because a player could make as much in 1 month in winter ball as they do in a 5-month minor league season, but it might mean more time away from your family. You're already away 6-8 months out of the year. How do you balance that with your family dynamics? And everybody's different, but imagine players being able to focus just on baseball and getting better in the off season. And right now, most guys can't do that.
And yet still these players are still expected to report back to their teams about their off-season training, and you have coaches checking up on them every week. You got Zoom meetings. Emily, how do we take away this old school mentality of, okay, we don't compensate you during the off season, but we'll still make sure you're supposed to be doing everything you're supposed to be doing and keeping track of your nutrition, but they don't have the resources.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to how highly these teams regard the full aspect of player development. Thinking about this a day from start to finish. What do these players need to really play at the top of their game? And I liked what a scout told me the other day. He said, if you're able to build a healthy farm system, that's the foundation to a healthy organization. That's the foundation to a healthy future for this club. So wouldn't you want to pour into your investments that way and say, look, we've already signed you to a contract. Why don't we see how much we can get out of you? Why don't we see how much you're truly capable of? And the only way to do that is to set these guys up for success. And I know some teams, based on the players' feedback, have been more involved. They've been more proactive. But again, I think this focus really needs to happen across the league, where these teams need to say, look, we've signed these guys to a contract. Let's see what they're able to do. But to do that, we've got to give them the tools for success. And it should be non-negotiable. It should be something that comes easy to say, if we believe this much to sign this guy, let's see how far we can take him. Let's see what we can pull out of him. And these teams really need to know that it's going to take a full investment of time, of resources, and making sure that these guys know they're a priority.
I believe it. And Collin, after speaking about off-season compensation, spring training should be a no-brainer for these minor leaguers. What are your thoughts on, compensation as far as spring training goes?
Even as big leaguers, big league guys have issues with the way they're compensated in spring training too. These guys, when you don't get a paycheck in the off season, and then you're expected to show up to spring training in the big leagues 6 weeks early before the season starts, usually like 4 to 5 in the minor leagues before the season actually starts. And then another 15 days after that before you get your first paycheck. This is a solid month to 2 months that guys are not being compensated for their work. And this is not voluntary work. Like, this is not something that you can show up if you want to, don't show up if you want to. It's, if you're 15 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late everywhere you go. So these guys are up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, depending on where they are, and they're going as long as the coaches ask them to go, because they understand the importance of a hard day's work, especially in spring training when you're trying to make a team. You're trying to make the next team. You're trying to make the leap and trying to just stay afloat at the same time. So for compensation, to me, it's a no-brainer. And, plenty of people will say, well, you're getting meal money. Well, the amount of meal money that you can actually, after you're paying dues to clubhouse managers, which do also an incredible job and work long, long hours, and they should be compensated as well. The minor league players should have enough money to be able to put food on their plate at night. You shouldn't have to worry about dipping into whatever non-existent savings you have in spring training while you're at your job. This is their job, and this is what they're doing, and they're putting in the hours, so the pay should come along with it.
Well, Sean, it's quote unquote a spring training invitation. That's what the loophole is that's being used over the past year. So how do we change that?
I think it continues to go back to organizing and getting minor leaguers a voice at the table and a voice in the conversation as we move towards protecting their rights. Because Emily talked about I don't know if was it an executive or a scout that said a healthy farm system is kind of the key to a healthy organization. In too many cases, the farm system is they're exploited. They're not taken care of in relation to the value that they're bringing for propping up this Major League Baseball industry that's become $12 billion a year industry that just saw record profits for 15 years in a row. I know they're saying they took a hit this year, and everybody took a hit this year, but we've grown this game into a global game, into a multi-billion dollar a year industry. And I think the better that it's about, taking care of the game and the sport in general and moving things forward. Because if you think about minor leaguers, the ones that don't make the major leagues and don't make a career out of being a major leaguer, they're the ones that go on to teach the next generation of players, whether they become a coach in a system somewhere or at a college level, or they become a hitting instructor or a pitching instructor. Some of them go into player development and scouting and the kind of the analytics side of the game. But those are the people and the players that are moving this game forward behind the scenes. And wouldn't you want those people to have a better experience in the game, while they're in the game, so that we can move things up, from the bottom and push things forward as a sport.
Yeah, I personally get continually stuck on this idea of nutrition. Like, this is one of the first meetings you always have, especially as a minor leaguer. Like, you got to have your nutrition right. We want to get you on a nutrition plan. And then we're talking about $25 a day and some deli slices and some apples, feeding these minor leaguers, walking through the line or whatever. So I get stuck on the idea that you preach one thing, but then you do the opposite for your players. Emily, have you received like some type of, I guess, pushback from the players on specifically more of that nutrition side at all?
There's definitely opinions on the nutrition. I know a lot of teams have done, I should say, some better than others. They are focusing on the nutrition aspect because I think it is becoming such a important topic, which it should have been long ago. But the fact that it is being discussed now is a really big deal. And I do have to give credit to, say, an organization like the Dodgers, who specifically have mentioned we are trying to have nutritionists available. We're trying to have specific meal plans in place because they understand this all plays into the development side of things for these guys, getting the proper nutrition, getting the right amount of sleep. And I know I joked with Sean before, sleeping on a bus, air mattresses that explode under you, and taking care of all those things. These guys, especially, and I know I can talk for both Sean and Collin, if you're starting or if you're pitching that day and you have to sleep on the floor of a bus before you get to the next field you're playing at, you're not going to be in a very good mood when you get to the field. So it's factoring in those kinds of things where you're playing in the full type of nutrition that you and I, whether we're on the field or off the field, our bodies need what they need. And I think if these teams continue to make this a priority, they're going to see better performance from their guys and just a better overall feel with their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Collin, any thoughts on nutrition as far as minor leaguers go?
Yeah, I had a dietary restriction when I was in the minor leagues, and I got laughed out of most clubhouses, to be honest with you, at that point in time, because they don't have the resources from the top down to be able to give guys what they need, especially if there is any sort of special need. But at a base level, we can't leave it up to each team to decide on who gets what, because we're trying to create the game itself. All of these prospects, they would always tell you, you're not just playing for your team in the minor leagues, you're playing for all 30 teams because you never know who's watching. But the truth is, there are different levels depending on which team you're on. Like Emily said, the Dodgers did a really good job and made it known that they were going to do a really good job with nutrition. And they kind of became the high watermark of teams looking at them saying, well, if they're doing this, like maybe we can do this. And there was a little bit of a trickle down, but without representation and without having a voice at the table, like Sean said, it's going to be left up to individual teams and individual managers and individual clubhouse managers to decide what's okay. And the truth is, it hasn't been okay yet. And I doubt that it's going to end up being okay in the long run if there's not a set standard across the board.
Sean, I want to talk about this idea of a voice at the table. Where do we go from here? Where is the solution? Is it unionization? Is it, collectively getting together with the MLBPA? How do you go forward if you are under this minor league umbrella and if you're looking down, I guess, from the major league level?
I think I'm not 100% sure how it would shake out. I'm not a labor lawyer. I'm super involved in the union, but there are, a lot of technicalities involved here. A sub-union is something that we might be able to look at. Forming a group of, the minor leaguers that falls under the umbrella of the larger Major League Baseball Players Association. Where they would have maybe access to some of the resources that we have. They have the backing of the Major League Baseball Players Association, which is one of the more powerful and visible unions in the country right now. But I think it's important that we continue to have this conversation and figure out what it would look like, because even from a maybe more cynical viewpoint, from looking at it, looking, like you said, down from the big leagues, the better treatment minor leaguers get, there will be almost like a trickle back effect. If there's no longer that enormous gap between the way minor leaguers are paid and big leaguers are paid, maybe we start to see less service time manipulation. Maybe we start to see guys being able to come right out of the minor leagues and stay in the big leagues without being, shuttled back and forth for 3 or 4 seasons while they're slowly chipping away and accruing service time and, hopefully getting to salary arbitration one day. So I think it's in our benefit, to get together with the minor league players, and help them organize and help give them a voice, to protect their rights and to protect, players all up and down each system in the major leagues.
Yeah, Collin, as an MLBPA rep, are your thoughts online with Sean's? Are you feeling like those things need to be done as well?
Yeah, there has been for a long time a little bit of I don't want to call it a stigma, but a little bit of a misrepresentation about how major leaguers feel about minor leaguers. And, I think the old school story used to be that, like you said, you pay your dues, but also you're trying to take my job. They would think like every minor leaguer coming up, I want to make it as hard as possible on you because I'm trying to stay here and you're going to take my job. Right. But I think people are starting to see that like he's saying, a high tide it's going to rise. All boats are going to rise here. The better the minor league players are getting, and we're already seeing it. We're seeing 2 teams in the World Series with a lot of young players, a lot of rookies, a lot of guys who were in the minor leagues in the last couple of years, starting to press guys in the big leagues and make the level of play higher. But I think more than that, what you're really looking for is to make sure that these people who are doing the same job you're doing are able to be represented the same way you're represented. Just because I was a minor leaguer one day and the next day I got sent to the big leagues did not change who I was as a person. It did not change what I did. It was still my job to play baseball. I was a professional baseball player, and I think as professional baseball players, it is our duty to look out for each other. It is our duty to have solidarity with each other and to understand that representation is the way forward as a worker in a free economy like we have. And so I think it's a big deal. I think, like Sean said, there's going to be some legal stuff to iron out. No doubt. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but I know that the demand is there. I know that the buy-in is there. And once you have those things as a group of workers, I think that it is really important to be able to use that voice and use it on behalf of the whole. And minor leaguers are baseball players just like we're baseball players at the big league level. And we're not that far removed to remember what it was like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like, a lot of times we can have a short memory, but everybody has gone through some sort of issue that has affected them on their way to the big leagues. And it would be remiss of us not to remember some of those things that we had to go through. And they made us who we are today, made us stronger people. So I think that's important to remember. Emily, any last thoughts on some of those solutions that we're talking about and the ideas that we can do, to the concrete ideas that we can really have to move this forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, kind of just going along with what both the guys said, having someone at the table who's had just that firsthand experience of understanding the challenges, understanding how much this hits home, how challenging this can be, and being able to present that in a balanced environment, to have multiple perspectives at the table that all have one goal of saying, we want to make sure these guys are being taken care of. It's not about greed. It's not about, selfish ambitions. It's saying these are people. These are humans. These are people who are putting in so much work every single day to strive to be the best that they can be. And to have those perspectives, I think if you can bring it into a balanced environment, you're going to start to see progress, kind of how we saw with the Blue Jays vocalizing, we want to raise our minor league players' pay back last year when that topic was really starting to kind of pick up steam. Once one team starts to pull that trigger, you're going to see other teams follow, because nobody wants to be the last team that's going to vocally take care of their guys. They want to be right alongside that. So it's just a matter, I believe, of Major League Baseball stepping in and saying, let's figure out ways where across the board, like Collin said, it shouldn't come down team to team. It should be a blanket expectation that these guys deserve to be taken care of, and it's just a matter of figuring out the best way to go about that.
Wow, that's big. And I feel like if there's any final thoughts that you guys have that feel like you need to bring to the table, I'll give you an opportunity, starting with you, Sean. If there's anything you think that needs to be said here before we finish, I'll go ahead and give it to you.
Just finally, there isn't Major League Baseball without the minor leagues. And right now the minor leagues are kind of, it feels like they're under attack a little bit. We're seeing teams get cut. We're seeing clubs are letting go employees in their player development staff, maybe scouts or other people who might have been in that war room helping to put together their prospect pools. And I just the draft has been scaled way back. And I know some of these issues have to do with the pandemic, but I really believe that if we're going to continue to move the game forward, and if we're going to continue to be the best baseball league in the entire world, that we need to do a better job of, starting to take care of the people at the bottom who are going to help grow this game, who are going to bring this game maybe to some more remote parts of the country, maybe parts of the country that are blacked out from watching games online, maybe parts of the country where it's too expensive for people to travel to go to a Major League Baseball game. I think it's all kind of tied together when you talk about moving the game forward and making the major leagues the best that they could be. It starts at the bottom, and it starts with those people, the players, being able to pursue their dreams with a certain level of dignity and self-respect, and giving them the opportunity to help their organization and to help themselves and their families in the process.
Yeah, I truly think that benefits everybody from the whole Major League Baseball spectrum, from fans, supporters, players, owners, teams, whatever it may be. That benefits everybody. Collin, any last items?
Everybody here said it really well, and I think we are all in agreement that the minor leagues is an important part of not just Major League Baseball, but an important part of baseball culture around the world. It has to be at the forefront of discussions going into any collective bargaining. It has to be at the forefront of any discussions on how the game is going to move forward. Like Sean said, it is a $10 to $15 billion industry, and 2020 has been bad across the board. It's been bad for almost everybody in the world. So I think if we can take anything away from it, we can see it as a shedding of light on the true hardship that minor leaguers go through on a yearly basis. Something that is already hard, the pandemic has shown to be impossible. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way for these guys. It shouldn't be that way for a large majority of professional baseball players. To call yourself a professional baseball player, you should be able to carry that moniker with some dignity. And like Sean said, right now, I think that is something that we need to address, and it needs to be addressed across the board.
And lastly, Emily, I'll throw it to you if you have any last thoughts as well.
Yeah, I know we've touched for very obvious reasons about the impact on the players, but I think something that I really hope people take away going back to what Sean said, how much of an impact this has on the communities of these minor league affiliates, and how many fans have said, this affiliate made baseball attainable to me. You know, you can walk up to the fence and have Fernando Tatis Jr. sign a baseball, or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. come up and pose for a quick picture. It makes the game available to the fans. And I spoke with one person in particular who lives in Billings, Montana, where one of the affiliates is located. And he said, if they take this team from me, I have nothing. I have nothing. And if you tie in the blackout restrictions on top of that, you're literally pulling baseball from this fan base. And that's absolutely no way to grow this game. And so being able to show that you have enough respect, like Collin said, letting minor league baseball players say, regardless of where I'm at, I'm still a professional baseball player. I should be proud of that. I should be able to walk with my head held high and not feel like I'm a laughing stock because of the fact that I'm making next to nothing. So it's really just a balance of saying, our goal should be to grow the game. What are the steps we need to take to get that from the fans, from nutrition, from proper pay, taking care of these communities that have invested so much of their time and effort into these affiliates? You want to grow the game, and this really is just not the way to do that properly if you want to see the fan base continue to expand.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said, and I love that. And finally, I want to thank all of you for joining me on this roundtable. Having played in the minor leagues for 7+ years before getting to the big leagues, we touched on every aspect that I had to go through personally, so this has really been something special for me today. And I'm sure it's been the same for everybody watching. And if you're at home watching, make sure you help us with our effort to improve minor leaguers' working conditions. You can do so by donating at advocatesforminorleaguers.com or even just sharing this video. Thank you all.